I feel like I'm cheating whenever I eat this steak. The silence of Havenwood was a heavy blanket these days. It used to soothe me back when Clara was alive. Now it just amplified the hollowness in the house, a constant reminder of her absence. History, my lifelong passion, felt like a cruel joke. What good were dates and names when the only history that mattered, my own with Clara, was irrevocably in the past? It was grief, I knew. Dr. Reed, with her kind eyes and endless patience, kept telling me that, but grief didn't explain the cravings. It started a few months after Clara's passing. I was wandering through town, aimlessly searching for something, anything to fill the void. That's when I saw it Abernathy's Meats, a small, unassuming shop tucked away on a side street I'd never noticed before, despite living here for 20 years. The window display was unsettling. Not gory exactly, but antiquated, like something out of a butcher shop from a century ago. I went inside. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, overlaid with a strange, almost sweet aroma I couldn't quite place. Mr. Abernathy, a tall, gaunt man with eyes that seemed to absorb light, stood behind the counter. He didn't smile, didn't really acknowledge my presence, just waited. I pointed to a steak in the display case. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Deep red, marbled with an intricate network of fat that looked almost like veins. It pulsed with a strange, almost unnatural vitality. "That one," I said, my voice raspy from disuse. He wrapped it in butcher paper, the sound oddly loud in the quiet shop. "Good choice," he said, his voice a low rumble. "It's special. I cooked it that night." The smell filled the house, a rich, savory fragrance that made my stomach growl. I took the first bite, and it was transcendent. An explosion of flavor that washed over me, obliterating everything else. It was more than just taste, it was a feeling. A sense of profound pleasure, of belonging. And then just as quickly it was gone, replaced by a flash of something else. A fleeting image of blood, not the clean, sterile blood of a butcher shop, but something darker, thicker. The image vanished before I could process it, leaving me with a gnawing feeling of unease. Guilt. That's what it was. A profound, inexplicable guilt that settled in my stomach like a stone. I dismissed it, attributing it to the general weirdness of the experience, but the craving remained. I went back to Abernathy's the next week, and the week after. Each time the same steak, the same overwhelming pleasure, the same creeping guilt. The dreams started soon after. They were vivid, disturbing. I was no longer Elias Thorne, retired history professor. I was someone else, someone ancient. I saw rituals performed under the light of a blood-red moon. I heard chanting, felt the cold steel of a knife against my skin. I saw faces, contorted in pain, their eyes wide with terror. Historical figures appeared, twisted into monstrous versions of themselves. The worst part was the feeling of being used, of being a vessel for something ancient and malevolent. I started researching Havenwood's history, digging through old town records, newspaper archives, anything I could find. The town was older than I thought, settled in the early 17th century by a group of Puritan dissidents. There were whispers of something else, though, something that predated the Puritans. Tales of pagan rituals, sacrifices to appease the land, unexplained disappearances. I started seeing things during the day, fleeting images, whispers in the wind. Faces in the crowd that weren't there a moment later. The blood. Always the blood. Dr. Reed listened patiently, her brow furrowed with concern. "Elias," she said gently, "I think you're projecting. You're grieving, and these fantasies are a way of coping." I tried to explain the steak, the overwhelming pleasure, the guilt, the dreams, the visions, but it sounded insane even to me. She adjusted my medication. Abernathy's shop became a focal point of my unease. I watched him, studied him, tried to decipher the secrets hidden behind his impassive mask. I noticed symbols etched into the walls, barely visible beneath layers of grime and paint, symbols that looked familiar from my dreams. Detective Harding, a burly man with a weary face, showed up at Abernathy's a few weeks later. There had been a series of animal mutilations in the area, livestock found drained of blood, their bodies arranged in strange patterns. Harding asked me about my purchases, my frequent visits to the shop. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was a suspect, just like the steak. "Detective, nothing more," I replied. Old man Hemlock, the town's resident eccentric, claimed to know the truth. He lived in a ramshackle cabin on the edge of the woods, his face a roadmap of wrinkles and his eyes clouded with age. Havenwood has a thirst, Elias, he croaked, his voice raspy. A thirst that needs to be quenched. It always has. He told me stories of the old ways, of the sacrifices made to the land, of the entity that dwelled beneath the soil, feeding on blood and pain. He warned me about the dangers of uncovering the past, of stirring up things that were best left buried. That butcher, Hemlock, rasped, he's just a caretaker. He feeds the land. Driven by a growing sense of dread, I followed Abernathy. He led me to a clearing deep in the woods, a place where the trees seemed to writhe and the air hung heavy with a palpable sense of evil. I watched from the shadows as he performed a ritual, chanting in a language I didn't understand, his movements precise and deliberate. In the center of the clearing stood a pen containing a single animal, a cow, but unlike any I had ever seen. Its coat was the color of midnight, its eyes glowed with an unnatural light. Abernathy raised a knife. I stepped out of the shadows. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "Maintaining the balance," he said, his voice flat, "keeping the land satisfied." I confronted him about the stake, about the dreams, about the visions. He didn't deny anything. "It's the essence," he said, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Concentrated suffering. It unlocks potential." He claimed the cattle was a special breed that his family had raised for centuries, but denied any ritualistic significance. However, he hinted that this particular breed contained a unique essence. As he spoke, I was overcome by a vision. The clearing dissolved, replaced by a scene of unimaginable horror. I saw the land of Havenwood consumed by darkness, its inhabitants writhing in agony, their blood flowing freely. I saw the entity beneath the soil, a monstrous being of pure malevolence, growing stronger with each sacrifice. And I understood. The stake wasn't just meat. It was a conduit, a key, a way to tap into the dark energy that permeated Havenwood, that had always permeated Havenwood. Detective Harding arrived, drawn by the commotion. A scuffle ensued. Abernathy was arrested, but the charges were vague animal cruelty, disturbing the peace. The true nature of his crimes remained hidden, shrouded in secrecy and folklore. Back home, staring into the freezer, I saw at the last stake. The craving was overwhelming, a primal urge that threatened to consume me. I knew what it was now. I knew what it represented, but the desire was intoxicating. I could eat it, embrace the darkness, become a part of Havenwood's twisted history, or I could resist, starve the craving, try to break free from its influence. I picked up the package, the cold seeping into my hand. I stared at it, the marbled flesh pulsing with an unnatural light. As I hesitated, a final vision flooded my mind. It wasn't of blood or sacrifice, but something far more terrifying. It was of Havenwood before the Puritans, before the rituals, before anything. It was the land itself, ancient and hungry, waiting. And I understood that the essence wasn't in the cattle, not truly. The essence was Havenwood. The image faded, leaving me trembling, the stake clutched in my hand. The question wasn't about the stake, but about myself. Could I escape Havenwood? Could anyone ever truly escape? The silence pressed in, heavy and expectant. I am left to choose. I still haven't decided. Maybe I never will.